All right, so it is 8:02, and I'm calling this meeting of the Wakefield Youth Council into order. So first on our agenda, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. So with that, we're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. All right, so next up we have our agenda. So I'm going to call down the roll. Please say yay if you are here. All right, so James,
Yay.
Nathaniel,
Yay.
Annabeth,
Yay.
Thomas said he'd be absent. William,
Yay.
Michaela let me know she'd be absent. Ahmed,
Yay.
Madeline,
Yay.
Maya and Sophia let me know that they'd be absent. Juliana,
Yay.
Olivia, and Vanessa,
Yay.
and Aaron. So next we have the approval of meeting minutes. So unfortunately, Thomas couldn't be here today with us. So he sent me the meeting minutes in advance so that we could get those approved. So I'm going to start off with the March 27th, I believe, the March 7th meeting minutes to begin with. And I'm going to give the overviews of each. So at our March 7th meeting, that was the meeting where we first approved the Pledge of Allegiance protocol. And we discussed the Galvin School Culture Survey that Mr. Collins was able to prepare and presented to the Galvin Middle School teachers at the Professional Development Day. And he also overviewed some of those results with us. Annabeth gave a presentation on the BB Library, talking about how that they formulated a survey to send out to middle and high school students. We heard a couple of liaison updates from the school committee with Ahmed and Nathaniel with the environmental club at the Galvin. We talked about the communications outreach subcommittee and the approved cultural council grant, which was used to discuss the project for April 3rd, the intergenerational tree project. We discussed some future open mic nights and then the white ribbon ceremony, and that concluded that meeting. So do I have a motion to accept the March 7th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, I'm going to go down the roll. Please say yay or nay. James,
Yay.
Nathaniel,
Yay.
Annabeth,
Yay.
myself, yay. William,
Yay.
Ahmed,
Yay.
Madeline,
Yay.
Juliana,
Yay.
and Vanessa.
Yay.
All right, so that passes unanimously. So next, I'm going to overview I went backwards. I was supposed to, so we're gonna go back. February 7th meeting minutes. So a little bit before the March 7th meeting. So prior to that, we discussed the liaison presentation that Olivia provided us, talking about the new police department building. And I discussed a little bit about the town council initiatives that are going on. And Nathaniel also provided us an update on the environmental club at the Galvin. We overviewed the letter that I prepared for Senator Lewis on behalf of the Youth Council supporting the general financial literacy education. We debriefed the open mic night, discussed school support services, and also discussed some stuff with the Cultural Council grant, and that generally capped that meeting. So do I have a motion to approve the February 7th meeting minutes? Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, I'm going to call down the roll again. All right, so James,
Yay.
Nathaniel,
Yay.
Annabeth,
Yay.
myself, yay. William,
Yay.
Ahmed,
Yay.
Madeline,
Yay.
Juliana,
Yay.
and Vanessa.
Yay.
All right, so that also passes unanimously. And so the last thing that we have with general procedural stuff is the last meeting that we were supposed to have, we did not meet quorum, but we still have to prepare minutes for that just to say that we did not meet quorum and just anything that we might have discussed in that time. So from that, from what I prepared from that, was that we were not able to prepare we were not able to reach quorum, but we did discuss just generally when our next meeting would be and what times generally work for people. So that was the basis of that. That's all that I included in that. So do I have a motion to accept the April 9th meeting minutes?
So
motion.
moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to call down the roll. James,
Yay.
Nathaniel,
Yay.
Annabeth,
Yay.
myself, yay. William,
Yay.
Ahmed,
Yay.
Madeline,
Yay.
Juliana,
Yay.
and Vanessa.
Yay.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we got through those procedural items. So now we have I skipped over public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak today? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go on to item 6. So school support services awareness initiative. So this is kind of like where the initial school support services discussion that we had at the beginning kind of like diverged between middle school with Mr. Collins and the survey that he was able to prepare, and now looking at the high school, which is what I was focusing on with Catherine, kind of increasing that dialogue with school support services to make sure that more students are able to access it. So before April break, I was able to meet with Mr. Robinson, who's the director of the guidance department at the high school, to kind of overview that discussion that we had and kind of the work that we've done so far and kind of what we took away from that meeting that Catherine and I had with the school adjustment counselors a little while further back in January. So from what we discussed, we both agreed on the point that sometimes students that a lot of students don't necessarily feel as though they know how to access the school support services at the high school, or might feel intimidated in doing so, especially because they might not know how to access their guidance counselor, or they might perceive it as too difficult to access their guidance counselor. And furthering that, the main part of the school support services that we learned about was that that there is a tiered system to school support services at the high school, with the guidance counselor serving as that initiating point. So that, yeah, that starting point, and from there, from discussions with guidance counselors, they are able to recommend further steps if they need to be taken, which could involve going to see the school adjustment counselors, or a separate specialized program that they would have in line with that. So generally what we discussed would be for us here to formulate a sort of plan to increase that awareness, increase that dialogue among students, and make it more well known how to access guidance counselors, and working with the guidance counselors themselves to make sure that students feel empowered to do that. And so I want to kind of open it up to us, but first, some things that we kind of discussed, like different avenues for reaching more students, besides the actual content of what we would be reaching them with. So we kind of discussed using the homeroom advisory periods at the high school, but we kind of discussed that as something that might reach some students, but not all students, because it's well known that some teachers don't do the homeroom advisory presentations and just do like an ASC for their students. And we also discussed making sure to bring it up during the grade level meetings that happen at the beginning of the school year, which reaches every single grade there, kind of like at the beginning of that, when Mr. Robinson's giving his overview, like kind of elucidating those points about the tiered system, and making sure that, like, you know, the guidance counselors are the initiating point, and also with the guidance counselors themselves in like things as we're choosing our courses, and like doing those initial meetings with guidance counselors, opening that point of dialogue with them, so students feel comfortable talking to their guidance counselors about any problems that may arise in a proactive instead of like a reactive manner. to make sure that students don't feel as though their guidance counselors are like a stranger or someone that they don't necessarily feel comfortable talking to. So I want to open it up to see what we think, and then we can kind of talk about further planning steps. So does anyone have anything that they'd like to say with this? Yeah, Madeline.
I think that those are all really good ideas. I think that part of it is that the teachers kind of have that option to just give it as an advisory or as a an ASC, and I think that a piece of it may be pushing for teachers to actually talk about those things, but that might be like a separate issue entirely. I also think that in terms of that, if we could do like one at the beginning of the year, like maybe like the second advisory, or I like the idea of during like the assemblies and stuff like that because I think that at the beginning of the year people are more inclined to like actually do those things if that makes sense. Whereas like towards the end of the year they're like, like forget about it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I think that is something we could maybe push for the beginning of next year, getting that talked about more. And I wish that there was some way to have like almost like consistent reminders, like, hey, your guidance counselor is a support for you or something. I'm trying to think of some sort of way. Did that like something around the school maybe, or I don't know. I thought I'd throw that out there in case anyone else wanted to piggyback off that, but I do wish that there was some sort of like almost
Yeah.
consistent reminder.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that that's a really good point, making sure that students do have those consistent reminders in a way that's not necessarily making them like tune those out, but like in a way that it's like a helpful thing to remind themselves if they ever need to seek out that support, that it's there. And there's like a wide breadth of resources that they're able to access from their guidance counselors, starting with that point. And I definitely also agree with what you were saying at reaching them at the beginning of the year when they're like still situating into high school. So they feel, so they have like that and almost like their high school toolkit or something along those lines that they know that throughout their years in high school that they have access to that. I think that's a great point. Um,
Ollie, one thing I just wanted to remind you, I think one thing that came up that several of the high schoolers said in previous youth council meetings was that a lot of students, especially in 9th and 10th grade, don't know they can go to their guidance counselor for this. So some people have good relationships. So I think Madeline, like what you said, is some sort of messaging around the school would be helpful, along with that advisory. So I think Ollie too, you could work with the youth action team to create some publications or something. So you could reach out to someone on the youth action team to see if you can partner. Because I know those students often have projects around health and wellness that they have to take on. So if the youth council and youth action team want to partner.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. And what you just said kind of started like an idea in my head. Maybe even starting like dialogue directly from the guidance counselors to their students, like with these reminders, kind of
But
like
they
the
might
guidance
not
counselor.
see their, like a student might not see their guidance counselor for a long time. The
No,
other thing,
I was just gonna say, I meant like in email form or just like
oh yeah,
was that, and also like at the beginning, like at the freshman orientation, and when because I know the guidance counselors also meet with all of the freshman students in their history classes, right at the beginning of the year too, kind of like those opportunities to like kind of just mention that stuff.
Even to tie it into, I mean, I know the guidance counselors, just in my role being an 8th grade teacher, at that transition period, I know the guidance counselors like have already come down to talk to the 8th graders about scheduling, but I know I'm pretty sure in a couple of weeks, I think the peer leaders are coming down to talk to the 8th graders. But even trying to bring it up as much as possible with the 8th graders, to like know who their people are, and can be in the future. And I think some work is done in particular for like students who heavily rely on their counselors at the Galvin. I think they like I think like Mr. Cedrone at the Galvin like connects those students specifically and introduces them to who like they can be using as supports at the high school, but I don't know if there's any more work that can be done. Like I know there's different summer like orientations and whatnot for the transition, but that's just something that I was thinking of reaching out even when kids are in 8th grade and making that transition.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too, like that transitional period from 8th grade to 9th grade, making sure that there's still that consistent communication there too. I think that's a good point to consider too. Yeah, Madeline.
Yeah, I think that another piece of it is students not knowing different roles that guidance counselors play within that role of being a guidance
Yeah.
counselor. Like I know, like I'll be talking with my friends sometimes, they'll be like, oh, like a teacher accidentally marked me as absent. And I'm like, well, why don't you talk to your guidance counselor? Because like they can change that. And I'm like, oh, like, I didn't even think of that. Like just little things that I think people don't necessarily think of as being the job or something that can be aided by a guidance counselor, and they actually can support you in those situations. So I think that when they're talking about various issues, being like, and by the way, your guidance counselor can help you with this, in like in those like little reminders of or even not even just reminders, but just like telling them in the first place about different things that your guidance counselor can help with. Because I know like a lot of people who are like juniors and seniors that don't even know that their guidance counselor could help them with certain things, and that could have helped them through all of their high school experience. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When Catherine and I were meeting with the school adjustment counselors, guidance counselor, Miss Leahy, was also there. And she kind of described it in a way as like guidance counselors wear three hats between kind of that educational support, the social emotional support, and college support. And kind of students might focus on like one of those while not necessarily realizing that they are also like really involved with those other components too, and making sure that yeah, I like how you said it, making sure that they're just telling them that like from the beginning, making sure that it's not necessarily like an afterthought, but like part of like the integral role that they have too. I like that. Yeah, Annabeth.
What you were saying about like the transition and sort of the whole telling them from the beginning thing, what a guidance counselor can do, maybe an email towards the end of the summer to all of the enrolled ninth graders, just saying like your guidance counselor is this person. These are some of the jobs that they can do. This is a support that you can lean on during especially your first few weeks and throughout your whole high school career.
Yeah, I definitely like that idea. I think that that's a really beneficial thing to have. Make sure that 8th graders not only know that they can access those resources, but also feel comfortable enough to access those resources. I think that's great. Yeah, Vanessa.
I think in addition to that, like more about the adjustment counselors, like I've spoken to like Miss Burns and Miss Keogh before, and I know they don't even really particularly like the name adjustment counselor because it kind of sounds like, oh, they're only there for the kids transitioning from the middle school to the high school, when in actuality, they're there for all students throughout like all 4 years. So I feel like that's also really important, and kind of going off of what Madeline was saying, like I feel like your guidance counselor also serves as just like a good jumping off point. Like, even if you don't know if that's like their realm, like I feel like they're always a great person to ask a question and then they can direct you, oh, I'm not the best person here, like talk to this person. Like, I don't know, I feel like they're always good at answering questions, or even like I feel like a lot of people don't realize that you can get your work permits there, just different things like Madeline was saying.
Yeah. And I think that that was kind of like the major point that when I was talking with Mr. Robinson, kind of what they wanted to emphasize that from the beginning, that they do have all that stuff. And that's kind of like the point of the role of the guidance counselors, to be what you need them to be in any capacity, and kind of like to refer you to what you need, and like through that, like through navigating that process. So I think that's definitely an important part too.
Ollie, one thing an idea that came up that I really liked, I'm actually on the board of the food pantry, and we had a lot of people that had misinformation about the food pantry. So we worked with WCAT to create like a 90-second video, and so many people have seen that video and they're like, wow, the food pantry. And we did a tour and so I do think like a little video that because I think a lot of people are right that teachers might not do a lesson in advisory, but they could play a video or something. So if you work to create a video for the beginning of the year that shows all the different things guidance can do, and then introduce the other student support staff. This is what Miss Burns and Miss Keogh do, so it gives a little more of an overview. That might be a good idea.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that you brought that up because I forgot about that. That's one of the things that actually Mr. Robinson also brought up during our meeting, because it can like grab students' attention a lot more. And we also kind of talked about it coming from students instead of like necessarily like coming from the adults, because students tend to like listen more when like it's their peers talking about it versus when it's the adults that are always like giving them that information. They might be a little bit more receptive to hearing fellow student voices. So I think that that's a really great idea to do that video to kind of show everything that they do, and kind of, as you said, like introducing the different parts of the school support services and what they do.
Right. And maybe it's like Madeline standing with her guidance counselor saying she helped me do this, and someone else standing with their guidance counselor. And so people see the connections and stuff. But we should get going on our agenda.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap this up, so we're gonna formulate a plan with this. So I think that the best next step would be kind of to refer this to the communications and outreach subcommittee to kind of work on this a little bit more in depth outside of the larger meeting. So it would definitely be great to have some more voices working with this as we kind of discuss the next steps, which would probably entail like what exactly we're going to do to reach the students at the high school, and the content of what we're going to actually say, and what we're going, and like the exact plan that we're going to roll out, because Mr. Robinson said once we have that plan to meet with him again to kind of start rolling that out. So it would be definitely great to get that done before the end of this year, so that we could start that like right at the outset of the start of next school year. So does that sound like a good plan, everyone? And is there anyone specifically that is not already on the communications outreach subcommittee that would be interested in kind of working with us as we like plan this out? All right, that's fine. And if anyone is interested in working on this with the communications outreach subcommittee, you can send me or Madeline an email. All right. So if there's no further comments on that, so next on the agenda is an item on school culture. So I wanted to give Mr. Collins an opportunity if he had any updates since our last meeting, any developments with administration or anything with the survey that he was able to formulate and present.
So it's been just with breaks and everything, it's been a minute since I've met with the positive school culture team. Our meeting is actually next Monday, I believe. Check my calendar. Yes, it
I think
is.
it's coming up this Monday.
Yeah, this coming Monday. So I'll be meeting with them this coming Monday. I've had informal conversations with our administration. And it's also one thing that we're looking at and talking about. I've talked to Mr. Cedrone about in terms of next year and next steps, particularly with like the positive school culture committee at the Galvin, and how/if that's continuing into next year, because I'm not sure if the committee like as is going to continue into next year. But that's something that we are looking at and talking about bringing into next year. So no formal or big updates, but it's something that I'm continuing the conversation with the committee, and have had conversations with administration as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, those definitely sound like good continuing steps, staying involved with that. So I think that that's really great. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Collins before we move on? All right. So next on our agenda, item 8 is an intergenerational tree project debrief. So I want to give Vanessa and Catherine an opportunity to kind of discuss how the event went, anything like any takeaways from the event, and yeah.
Yeah, I thought the event was really successful. I didn't keep track of how many people. I would say like at least 40 people,
I think it was almost 60.
60.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was since it was our first time doing it, we didn't really have a idea of how many people would be there. I think 2 or maybe even 3 Girl Scout troops came, so then that contributed a lot to the total amount of people. We did have a lot of seniors too, so it was like kind of perfect. Like we had, I think one of the troops was in 3rd grade, and then we had seniors. So it was a lot of like the elementary school ages. But they seemed to really enjoy the event. We were able to get a donation from the savings bank to provide lunches, which I think was a big hit. In the future, if we do have the same turnout, we'll definitely need more food. We ran out of pizza very quickly. But they made like a ton of different leaves. They looked great. Some people shared what they wrote. And then I think the next steps would be finding a student graphic designer to then photograph them and then put the banner together so that we can print it out.
Yeah, that sounds great, Vanessa. I'm really happy to hear that the event was a great success. I'm so sad that I couldn't attend it, but it's great to hear that it was a great success. And
And
so
we have to say, we put all the when students and adults were finishing them, they were laying them all out, and it looked really cool.
that's
And
great.
all the different things that people said that they liked about living in Wakefield, I just got goosebumps. It was an awesome event, and I just want to thank all the youth council members that volunteered their time to be there to help serve pizza and mingle groups and corral the excited kids. So
Yeah, definitely.
Moving forward, I guess the only concern that I would have, and Catherine, we can later talk about this, but for actually having someone like put it together, since the school year is like ending shortly, I don't know if we're kind of on a time constraint for whoever ends up taking on this project.
I think we can get it done. I already emailed the art teacher, so
Okay, perfect.
yeah, we should be able to find a student and be able to put it together.
All right, that sounds perfect. That's already in motion. So, and I'm very excited to see it, the final product and see it go into the community, because I think that that's definitely going to be a great addition, to kind of showcase all of that, what people really like about Wakefield. I think that's a great concept. And so does anyone else have any questions or anything they'd like to say, with the intergenerational tree project? Okay. So next on our agenda is the civic action projects. So we wanted to introduce this topic today because that's going to be starting soon, I believe, right? Yeah, that's going to be starting soon with the 8th graders and 11th graders working on those projects for policy and like contributions to the local in their history classes, things that they like to see change in the local or state realm of that like government along those lines. And so kind of what we kind of discussed at the beginning of this term around this time was to serve as kind of that connection point between the students themselves at the schools and then the actual government stakeholders that would make this possible, because like that trend of the civic action projects being created, people email their like the person that they're trying to connect with, but then no real action comes out of it just because of the way that things turned out. So kind of making sure that for those projects that they would really like to see go through, to make sure that they have the resources and the support that they need to make those projects a reality. And so Catherine, did you have anything to say on this? Because I think you said that you met with Mr. Pavey to kind of mention this.
No, we were going to talk to Mr. Collins and Mr. Pavey and I were going to meet on this to figure out kind of the best strategy to make sure that students know that they can utilize the youth council to move some of their projects forward, just because the timing of the year is difficult. I know Mr. Collins wants to talk about it, and then maybe Nathaniel.
Yeah, so I know we're gonna be we're right now, just as we came back from break, are starting our unit on state and local government. So over the next we're gonna introduce it over these next couple of days, but then won't really start working on it until probably like a couple of weeks. And then pretty much it'll be the whole month of May. But yeah, I just think having more support and more guidance, because a majority of my students don't know the avenues and the people and the process even of how certain things work. So I think even just having just more point people that students can kind of reach out to or connect with would be helpful in facilitating some of the work that they're doing. I know one thing that I've always struggled with is there's 3 teams in the 8th grade, so there's a lot of duplicate project or duplicate ideas amongst teams and even amongst my own like class to class. Like there's this similar projects or there's a lot of projects that involve the school committee. So then like the school committee's getting an influx of emails from students. So I've always tried to think of ways to combine and make it most logical so that it's not inundating people with kind of repetitive or redundant emails. So any support and thoughts and suggestions, I think for our students, or even the teachers. And I'm not super familiar with how it works up at the high school, but in talking with Mr. Pavey, I think it's a similar project, just maybe a little bit more advanced when it gets to, or a little bit more involved when it gets to 11th grade. But I'm open to any and all suggestions or thoughts, or particularly the support for students.
Yeah, I think that's really important with this, and I like how you said like point people and facilitating that like discussion, and also the actual like where their projects would go, so that way they don't like inundate a certain group, which would kind of prevent them from going with like all the projects that they receive. And I think that the youth council can really play a really good role in kind of maybe not necessarily or maybe even like an advisory point, like as people are going through those projects, kind of like what would be the best avenue for them to take based on like the nature of their project or something along those lines, to see it come to like success with that. I think that would be a really great point. And also even just like being one of those like email points that students can use to like see if this is something that even like the youth council could take on and like advocate for students. I think that that's also something to consider. Yeah, Nathaniel.
So I was gonna say, maybe just follow up on what Mr. Collins was saying with students doing like the same ideas, and for example, like the school committee getting bombarded with similar ideas. Maybe what we could do is have just based on different liaison positions that we have on this youth council, we could get students, like for example, I'm environmental sustainability committee. So maybe we could have students who are maybe doing something like along those lines of environmental protection. Um, excuse me. Have sort of maybe they could like get in touch with that particular person who has experience or is in touch with the liaison groups of that field.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I think that that would be a really beneficial way to kind of delegate responsibility for on our part on the youth council and kind of again like increase that possibility for like the facilitation between the students' ideas and then the actual like government stakeholders that would make that possible. I think that's a really great way to tackle this. I think that that should really be considered as we continue formulating this plan. I really like that idea, Nathaniel. Madeline?
Yeah, I was gonna say some very similar things to what Nathaniel said, but I think one, it us being a resource for the eighth graders figuring out their projects is a good way for them to kind of broaden what they think about in terms of ideas for their projects. Like, I know that if I had, like, I work with the Commission on Disabilities, and if I had known then that that was even a thing, I probably would have actually reached out to them for my project. And so I think that this is kind of a great way for those kids to one, learn that the youth council is a really great resource. If they're like, hey, like, I really want to pursue this, then maybe they could join the youth council and then be able to grow with it in that way. So kind of a way to also promote this council and get more people involved in it. And also um, being, this is very similar to what Nathaniel said, but in terms of talking to people who've already worked with those committees and finding out what types of projects they're already working on, and if there's something kind of similar or something missing in their plans that would kind of um, help them make, like, be a bit more informed just in terms of their project as a whole. Because I know my original idea was something that was just very, like, my original idea was to do some sort of like a um like women's protection course um through the police department, and that was, I didn't know that was already kind of a thing in a lot of ways, and so I had to work with my teacher a lot on it. But I think that this could be a good resource for those kids to kind of dial in what is actually going to be a useful project that they could pursue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like how you said like promoting that idea that students would have like do you have the opportunity to join the youth council, which actually we're going to be talking about that later in this meeting. And kind of like advertising it as like an opportunity for students to take on their ideas and put it and go into a position where they would really have the opportunity to try to advance that on a little bit bigger of a level. I really like that idea. Yeah, Ahmed.
Yeah, more in relation to Mr. Collins's issue with not issue but experience with middle schoolers and their civics learning project. I think would maybe one of the better ways to introduce the youth council like to students and allow us to help them might be just to have them CC one of us or like assign each of us to a class, something like that, to their emails when they send them. Obviously, like with students that need more help, we can definitely meet one on one with them, but I think that maybe even having students who are emailing like the school committee or something of the sorts, especially like within our liaison positions, just CC'd on the email, just in case student needs any help or is unsure of where to go, we'll be up to date with their progress while not having to like meet with them every single day or anything very, very time consuming.
Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. Like it definitely like ingratiating the youth council and each individual member with kind of those students and making sure that they have those resources and those opportunities to kind of get more in-depth help with their projects and making them a reality.
One of the things that just kind of popped into my mind, which um was just a thought that I had, was I don't even know if it would be um possible or helpful even to have like a little like flyer thing. I mean, not a flyer, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, but like even just like a chart of like each member, their liaison, and like maybe some issues that you guys know are being tackled by what, if the school committee or whatever department or point person you're working with, just to, because honestly, I don't live in Wakefield. I know the 2 other 8th grade social studies teachers don't live in Wakefield. They are a little bit close to Wakefield, so I don't always know all of the issues. And I don't think the 8th graders know all of the issues. So that could even be helpful to have like your contact information, who you're working with, and then what some issues already are that maybe you're tackling with them, or that the youth council is tackling with them, or just that they're having to deal with. That could be something that could be helpful, and make it a little bit more
Yeah,
clear who
I'm
the
thinking we actually we have like a couple different things I could kind of put together because we have a description of each liaison what that department or board or commission does. So we could put that with the youth council members' name and their email address and the person who's in charge of that. So like, for example, my son last year was interested in mountain biking trails and stuff, and he wrote to a town councilor, but it probably would have made more sense to write to, the recreation or the forestry director. So I think what we can do too is help create some sort of like 2-page flyer for the social studies teachers with the descriptions and the content. Would youth council members, would you all feel comfortable with your email addresses associated with your liaison?
One thing too, I know I do, and I'm pretty sure the 2 other 8th grade teachers, if this at all appeases you, I don't let any of my students hit the send button on Ellie. Ellie, you might remember
Yeah,
this, 'cause I
yeah, I
did this
remember
when
this when you
I
said
don't let anyone hit the send button unless I'm standing over their shoulder, and I've seen that there's a subject line. It's not like, yo, what's up? Like so you wouldn't be getting anything crazy.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. And I definitely think that yeah, a chart like that, I feel like that would be very, very helpful because it's like set up in a simple manner, but it's really helpful to kind of like show how students can progress with their ideas and then take that and reach out to the right people that would make like the maximum impact. I really like that idea, and I think that's definitely something that we should start working on to
And
make
I
that.
like what you said too about like examples of a couple different types of things that would fall under that department. Because I do think like a lot of, like Nathaniel said, a lot of people are interested in the environment and, and so making sure.
Yeah,
All right.
'cause, like some boards work on a wider expanse, like the town council or school committee, while some boards are like more specialized that they might have a better chance of like getting more of an impact.
Okay.
And
So
so
I'll create a draft of that and
Yeah.
send it to
Sorry.
you, Mr. Collins and Ollie.
yeah,
This is also something that I think we can talk about more in the communications and outreach subcommittee meeting, which will be happening soon. I'm going to send out a doodle poll for that. But I think that that's something that we can talk more in depth about and create during that meeting as well. So.
Okay. I can put together everything I have and you guys can make it look good.
okay,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, we'll definitely work on that. Okay, so with that, does anyone else have anything that they'd like to say on civic action projects? Okay, so now we're going to move on to liaison updates. So I'm going to share Annabeth's presentation with us. Let me take 1 second to pull it up.
So my computer has been glitching a little bit. So if I freeze, just tell me if you missed something and I can repeat it. Yeah.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Looks good.
Okay. All right, Annabeth, you can go ahead.
All right. So we sent out a survey a couple of weeks ago about how people use the library and what the library could do to help people. So these are the results. Next slide, please. So these are some of the challenges that people mentioned as like being the bigger ones. So the mental health, the social media culture, stress, and phones were sort of the most mentioned. And the other ones, like the usual suspects, avoiding bad influences, bullying, and fitting in, were also mentioned. But it was interesting to see which ones were more emphasized. So it was a little bit surprising that it was those four. Next slide, please. Thanks. So 46.8% of the respondents report biking, scooting, or skateboarding around town. So as town infrastructure and sustainability efforts like increase, this number is also likely to go up even more. For entertainment, we asked students sort of what they like to do in their free time, and they have a very diverse range of replies in this area. I don't have details at the moment, but I'm imagining it's different genres of books, music, movies, and like a bunch of activities. 30% of responders have a hard time finding a place to hang out. So this is one opportunity where the library could improve and help people find a good space to spend time with friends. And school media centers have been reported as like effective and good spaces to do homework. So like the Learning Commons for the Galvin and the library at the high school at Wakefield High. And I think that might be it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Annabeth. That's a great presentation, and I really liked the statistics especially, which kind of showed like more tangible increases like with those like data with that data, like seeing like the results of like different townwide efforts, and kind of like seeing how BB Library is like taking that in and like analyzing that, as well as the place to hang out piece I thought was also really interesting, and different components of that too. So thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Annabeth? All right. So yeah, thank you, Annabeth. That's a great presentation. Thank you for sharing that with us. So as we continue with liaison updates, I would like to share a liaison update regarding my liaison to the town council. So kind of in the last couple of months, the town council has been very busy with the budgeting season. And so I think that is, yeah, so they've accomplished a lot with that. And kind of some major points that I kind of wanted to share with us today is that the Wakefield Public Schools and Health and Human Services Department budgets have already been approved. And they also previously approved different funding that I found really interesting, kind of applicable to us and kind of like the work that we've been engaged with. Part of that was, and I actually discussed this with Julie at one of my earlier meetings with her this year. They were able to approve funding to renovate the upper level of the senior center, to open it up for public use again, which I thought was interesting, considering how much work we do with the senior center. I thought that was an interesting part. They also provided funding to improve the pedestrian path along the western side of Lake Quannapowitt, which I've also found interesting. They also are positioned to update plans for staffing to make way for the next generation of town leadership, with specifically with the town administrator and the town accountant, which I thought was really interesting, kind of like the future, looking at the future for an outlook for that, understanding that soon they're in the next couple of, well, in the future, there's going to be that new leadership and kind of preparing them for the transitional period of that, when that eventually comes. And so we also received a $100 donation that was accepted by the town council on our behalf, and the budgeting process is still in the works, I believe, with our budget last time I was able to discuss it. The other, yeah, I think that's the general point, that the points that I wanted to bring up with us. And I will be giving a presentation to the town council on May 13th, kind of showing what we've been able to do this year and discuss with the town council, kind of all the different stuff that we've been able to do and anything that they would like to ask us about specifically. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, Amit.
Yeah, no, sorry. I also just had like a quick like informal liaison update, but whenever you're done.
Yeah, I just wanted to, does anyone have any questions regarding my liaison update before we go on to Ahmed? All right, yeah, Ahmed, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm liaison to the school committee, and there hasn't really been like much controversy or any like hot button topics for in the past couple meetings. I think I gave an update about 5 weeks ago, but I think I also mentioned that a lot of people in the school committee are going to the school committee and presenting like their different aspects of community, whether it be sports or awards, or we have had middle schoolers and elementary schoolers come to school committee meetings. I was planning on having like a formal youth council update, and potentially the form of a presentation go to the school committee. So I'm currently in the works of preparing that probably for the either the upcoming one in about a week or the one afterwards in about 3 weeks. And I just wanted to reach out and like let you all know that if you guys have anything that you want me to mention that's like not already mentioned in the meeting notes, or you want me to specifically highlight, please feel free to send it over so that I can include it as part of the presentation. I'll also share the presentation with the youth council prior to me presenting it there.
Yeah, I can send you the midterm press release that Vanessa was able to prepare, since that had a lot of the information that we've done for the first half of the youth council term. If there's anything that you want to include in that, and anything else that I have that's beneficial to you, and everyone has your email, I believe, so they would be able to send you anything specifically about their liaisons to, or any of the work that they've been doing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. It's great to hear that you're going to be giving them an update soon. So yeah, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ahmed? Okay. Does anyone else have any updates as to their liaisons that they'd like to give before we move on? All right. So next on our agenda is communications outreach subcommittee update. So yeah, Madeline has returned to her capacity as the chair of the communications and outreach subcommittee since the last time we met, and I just want to give her a chance to kind of talk about our next meeting. And yeah, so Madeline, do you have anything that you want to say before oh, is Madeline there? Or maybe she's disconnected. So yeah, oh,
Can you see me?
yeah, we can see you. I think you disconnected for a second.
Sorry, I shut off my camera for 1 second to go get water, and then it wouldn't come back on.
That's okay. I was just saying if there was anything that you wanted to say as to the next communications outreach subcommittee meeting, since it's the update for that subcommittee.
I don't think that there's anything outside of the things that we've mentioned at this meeting, but I think we'll definitely talk more in depth about the guidance counselors and how we can get information out about that through social media, through the schools themselves, and then also the information about us and the work that we've done and the committees that we work with. To the 8th graders for their civic action projects. But outside, and then, the other thing, and this is something we'll be talking about in a little bit, but the applications reopening and getting the word out about the opportunity of the youth council as a whole. So those are some things that I think we'll definitely talk about. We don't have updates on them yet, but if you have more thoughts or ideas or anything like that, you can reach out to myself, Ali, or you can come to the meeting, which I'll be sending out a doodle poll for a date for soon. So
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Madeline. That's great. So do we have any questions for communications outreach subcommittee? All right, so now we're going to move on to youth council applications. So on Monday, youth council applications formally opened for the 2024-2025 cycle, which, as we know, our terms are 1 year. And for this current body, our terms are ending on June 30th, 2024, with the new term starting on July 1st, 2025. So for existing youth council members, for that are eligible to return, unfortunately our seniors are not able to return to us, but for our eligible youth council members right now, we invite you to reapply, because we definitely appreciate hearing the voices and the tenure that we've been able to learn from all of you. But yeah, definitely, if you're interested in applying for another term on the youth council, make sure that you reapply, because it's not an automatic reappointment process. So I will actually send out the application link with that has like the information to include in an email to everyone, to make sure that everyone has the ability to access that. And so the deadline is May 17th. And we kind of touched on this in the communications outreach subcommittee update, but we are starting that advertising process now, kind of reformatting the materials that we used last year, because we made a lot of different posts and preparations for that last year, taking that and updating it with the current information. And so we're hoping to get a good turnout, a good applicant pool to be able, just like last year. So does anyone have any questions about applications or anything that they'd like to say? All right. So yeah, and I'll be in touch with that. And if anyone has any questions, they can email me or Catherine. So next is just a brief little exciting update, actually. So Catherine and I received a message from the leaders of the Wakefield Youth Voice team over in Wakefield, the United Kingdom, actually, because they actually found out about us through their own research about their own group, and being Wakefield, it was really interesting to learn that. And so they wanted to meet with us and kind of discuss the different ways that we function, and how, like, our strategies, and kind of discuss how like the similarities and differences between working on a youth group in the United States versus working on a youth group in the United Kingdom. So I just wanted to share that with you. I don't think we have any updates right now because they were just on Easter break over in the United Kingdom. So we are waiting to hear back from them. So once we have more information about that, we'll definitely follow up with everyone. So does anyone have any questions on that? All right, so next is just a brief update about Open Town Meeting. So that's taking place on April 29th. As always, it's open to the public to view, even if you're not an eligible voter, and we definitely recommend you to come. I did in the fall, and it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed it. I know this one is probably gonna go on a little bit longer, a couple of days probably, but yeah, the warrant's pretty hefty this time around. But yeah, it's definitely a great experience to see how Wakefield's government functions, and it's definitely a great experience to see in action. So and we're going to be probably doing a post about that soon, just to kind of remind people and eligible voters that that's happening, and send out the warrant too, which contains everything that's going to be voted on. Does anyone have any questions about Open Town Meeting? All right. So next, does anyone have any general announcements that they'd like to share before we start to wrap up? All right. So next, we're going to determine our next meeting date. So the next half day is May 8th. Unfortunately, that falls right on Warrior Give Back Day, which is run by the student council at the high school. So I know that many of us are not going to be able to attend, and we would likely have difficulty in reaching quorum alongside different sports stuff that's happening, as well as being in the midst of AP exam season. So we're probably going to hold a doodle poll meeting in the evening or at WCAT, depending on what works best for people, in late May, and we'll be in touch about that as we get closer to that. So does anyone have any questions on that?
I think we should probably meet before youth council applications are due.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that would
And because it's civic action project, so we probably want to meet in a couple weeks.
yeah,
We
that would
can
probably,
do and we had a lot of members that weren't here today, so we can make sure that a lot of them come back for the next meeting.
yeah, so we can probably
The
aim
middle
for
of, yeah.
May, yeah. So we can, we'll do that instead. Yeah, that's a good point. So we'll do that.
Yeah, maybe we can even look at something like the 14th or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a Tuesday.
Just I think double checking with well, I don't know how early we would have the meeting or if it would be in person, but just double checking with AP schedule still.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure to accommodate with that. I know that it's kind of all over the place for people. So we'll send out the doodle poll to find out what date works best for people to kind of get it before May 17th. To make sure that we get it well enough in advance before applications are due and kind of to discuss civic action projects in greater depth. So does that work for people? To generally discuss that as the doodle poll as we send that out soon. All right. So with that, does anyone have anything else that they'd like to say before we end the meeting? Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Do I have a second?
I second.
And I'm going to call down the roll. Say yay or nay. James,
Yay.
Nathaniel,
Yay.
Annabeth,
Yay.
myself, yay. William,
Yay.
Ahmed,
yeah.
Madeline,
Yay.
Juliana,
Yay.
Olivia. Oh, she's not here. Vanessa.
Yay.
All right. So that passed. That we adjourned unanimously. Thank you everyone for being here. I know we ran a little bit later tonight, but thank you all for your engagement today, and I'm looking forward to discussing more with you about all our various things that we're doing. So thank you everyone. Have a nice rest of your night.